But I thought that was a great way to start this episode.
What's the point?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly, he was dealing with that existential crisis, and he was just like, why am I doing this? I'm out. See ya. I'm just gonna go be stoner Jesus hippie.
Okay, I've got a theory on it for you.
Please.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Mark and I are talking about the hit science fiction TV show from Apple TV Plus, Foundation, Season 3, Episode 1, A Song for the End of Everything. So spoilers are ahead. And if you're enjoying our videos, then a like would be appreciated. If you don't want to miss a single one of our breakdowns, then just be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications. And with that, pretty wild opening with the Mule. What did you think of what's going on in like the middle?
The planet is Calgon, and so it's like there is the middle band.
Middle bands, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's the middle band of planets that are kind of independent. They're not really thing, and it's like Calgon is the center of that. And so if Calgon falls to one side, it could turn the tides of, both Empire and Foundation. But I thought that was a great way to start this episode. I think the whole last season has been teasing the Mule of like how terrifying he is, how bad he is. And, we saw like him in flashes with a lot of war going on, a lot of chaos, but never really fully knowing what he could do.
Yeah.
And so seeing the scope of his power, which I think he makes Tellum look like a nothing burger. And he is just
absolutely
incredibly strong. And with seeing that opening scene, it has really set the stakes for what the Mule can do and how powerful he is.
What did you think about the actor switch in this?
Recasting?
And the recasting and like the different portrayals.
I think it was good. So the other actor, I believe it is from a show called Sex Education. And he's a great actor. He's phenomenal. But he might not have like the strongest English. And I think that because of that, like some of the acting choices could get muddled. And so this guy is significantly younger than the Mule that they recast. It's the guy from Game of Thrones. Euron Greyjoy. And I think it's a good casting. He brought this very like that guy just plays a good bad guy, he brings this kind of like sinister, but almost kind of like a gentle sinister, like nothing hectic, it's like that very like destroy yourself, but like on your own time, very much like it's scary because it seems so like he kind of seems nice in a way, like he seems like a terrible person, but like in a weird psychopathic way of kindness.
I think psychopath is more of like what I got from it.
Yeah.
Okay, so very interesting portrayal because I do feel like the two portrayals are very different. I don't feel like he read the energy of the first performance and was like, let me kind of do this, but do it, in my own way. It feels like a completely different performance. The first one seemed almost like a Shakespearean, bad guy. Like he was very, very grandiose. And like even the way that he kind of enunciated things, it had kind of this like grandiose bad guy to it. Versus I feel like this performance, he seems a little unhinged.
Yeah.
A little chaotic, a little... it was, but it made it very compelling to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was like watching a train wreck, because it wasn't just that he's destructive. It's that there's like something about like he's got a certain like sway about the way he's destructive that's just like, wow, that is wild.
And an air of confidence. Like, I do think that it did seem like maybe the original Mule was like planned to be almost this like tragic villain that was kind of like, I've been dealing with these thoughts of Gale and she's come to get me and she's here and I got to deal with this. Where this version of the Mule seems very much like, I'm just kind of a sadistic guy from, start to finish, and I'm just going to do really bad stuff, and whoever's in my way is going to pay the price.
Right. I doubt the show is going to address it, but I actually feel like there could be an in-world explanation to why there's a different actor. That, just like Tellum was able to change the future in killing Salvor, maybe things have changed because of Tellum and or what like Gale and Harry are doing with the Second Foundation that has brought about a different the Mule from the Mule that, that Gale saw. Like I said, I'm sure they won't actually address it and they'll just kind of move on, but it could actually be explained.
Yeah, and I think that could be cool, but yeah, I don't think they're gonna do that, unfortunately. And plus, especially with the time that they have, and I feel like there's new cast of characters, even the Cleons feel new. It's all very different, so I think it would be very hard to maybe explore that of like, oh, well, we changed this. That could just be confusing, convoluted. And I noticed that they also, in the flashback scenes, have changed the actor to be him. So
yes.
Even in the recap, I believe it had him as the actor doing the thing. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. That guy wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be good. And hopefully they can bring, he doesn't have to be tragic. He can just be, crazy and doing his thing. But the tragic story could have been, I think, really good. But overall, loved the opening. I felt like it re-hooked me back into Foundation. It made me feel like Foundation is back. I know it has been gone for a long time for most people, not for us, but
right.
To me, I'm like, it's back. We're ready. Like, let's jump into this. Very excited about it.
And I think a good hook is important for a show like this. I do feel like the way that the show is done could be confusing for audiences, especially with the amount of time off in between. Because the scope of the past two seasons has been large. There's lots of names, faces, planets to kind of juggle, different plot lines going on with like very loose connections. So it's not like there's just one thread that's like easy to remember. There's so many different things that you're juggling. And then the way that the seasons are so far apart means they give you a whole new cast of characters and planets. And it's like, it is based off of the actions that happened previously, but not directly because, it's like 100 and whatever years apart. So it does feel like it's a little bit more mental work if it's been that long to try and remember what happened. And then on top of that, even the people that are almost like completely different versions. We'll be getting to them, but like the Cleons are very different.
Yeah. I know I complained about this in the last season, but weirdly, I'm now a more supportive of like, I think this works better for the story that Foundation is trying to tell. Like, I know I was kind of like, there's all these new characters and I don't know who they are. And you got to like, instead of like telling me what I want to know, you have to like flesh these new characters out. And after that, like after the last season where they flesh out, Hober and Constant and Polly, I'm very much of the, like, I can't wait to learn about Pritch.
Yeah.
I think he's a great character. The new Cleons and what they're doing. Demerzel's person from Luminism that she's chatting with is an interesting character. The Galactic Council's interesting. Like, now I'm, like, more invested in these, like, little new introduction stories because I'm like, you gave me such a good, satisfying one in the last season. I'm looking forward to what I get in this season.
It's also an interesting format of, it's almost like throwing something into water and like watching the ripples, and you can see the effect of it so far away. But the cool thing about this format is like, because it's over 3 such distinct periods of time, you really get to see how extreme the evolutions or like the consequences of actions are, after 100 years. And so it's like you only the significant things really cause a big impact, and you get to kind of see, out to a distance, like what is that impact. And that's really cool, because it does make it feel much more believable of like how we went from first episode, first season of like something is going to happen that is going to bring down the entire galaxy. And it's hard to believe that would happen in like a decade. So it's like we've really been able to see how the Foundation has been formed and all the steps it's gone through, and like how this evil is coming about, and how the galaxy is splintering through these like big jumps.
Yeah. And I think overall, the first season feels very self-contained, where it like didn't really express the threat of the Mule. Like they bring up the Mule,
yes,
but they don't really explain what his role will be in the future, which is nice. But I do think that like the whole last season was like, we have to prepare for the Mule. Like we were focused on the second crisis, but we were also looking ahead to be like, the Mule is coming. We have to be worried about this. We got to figure out what we're going to do about it. And now the second season and the third season feel like attached. So it feels, this is one thing that I was thinking about, like the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie was like its own thing. And then the second and third one were kind of like part one and part two of like a bigger narrative. And I feel like that is what we're seeing in these seasons. Like season one was kind of its own thing, 2 set up something, and 3 is about to finish it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And it's interesting in this middle band, like how much sway it has over the scales of the galaxy. That if one side were to take it, they could possibly tip the scales and be able to take the rest of the galaxy. And I do wonder whether or not, so like the previous Dawn and Sereth and like what came from them hasn't been referenced.
Yes.
And I do wonder whether or not that has anything to do with the middle band, whether or not it's like the dynasty that came from them is what kind of caused the split in between, or what opened up the split between Foundation and, Empire, where it's like Foundation used to just be the outer rim, and then it was Empire was like everything in between, and whether or not they like carved out this center portion that kind of open up that split or not. Like, I wonder whether or not we'll get any information about that, or if this will just be another one of the things of like, this galaxy is so big, we can only talk so much about so many things, and some things just aren't important to the story.
I mean, I hope they do go a little bit into it, because I think it's a lot more interesting. Like before, we had only kind of had like Foundation on the outskirts, and we weren't really seeing like the political dealings that they had to deal with. We saw them trying to like recruit planets, but not really like how they're running things, other than like the one offline that they're kind of doing stuff for profit. But now in this season, it does feel like we are kind of getting more of the like politics behind everything, like Foundation working with the traders working with Empire, these middle band of planets that like they've both kind of agreed like we're not going to attack, seeing Foundation treat with Empire in Trantor. There is this more like interesting political thriller dynamic about this season, where it's not just like Empire's the king, they're just ruling in their ways of 3 that they normally do. But now we also get to see this really cool version of Empire that is kind of like a weird tortured soul, where it's like, okay, I'm brought into this existence. I'm supposed to be running Empire. Empire's crumbling. Is it going to crumble with me? Am I going to be the last one? Or am I going to save it? Like, and it's like almost creates this existential dread for these poor obedient vessels that follow what Demerzel says.
Right. This is such a wild representation of Empire, and I wonder if current day, if it was just like too much, that everything is just getting smaller and smaller, and the numbers that Demerzel keeps talking about, are saying that like there's nothing that can change it. They just kind of keep finding like new issues, and like what's the point of all of this if she's the one in charge of it, and she's listening to a thing that's saying there's nothing you can do, like it's crumbling regardless. What's the point?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly, he was dealing with that existential crisis, and he was just like, why am I doing this? I'm out. See ya. I'm just going to go be stoner Jesus hippie.
It's hilarious seeing that being the way that he deals with an existential crisis. I think that this kind of goes back to what I talked about in like season 2 that I liked about the fact that they've really found a way to integrate humor into this. You know, that like season 1, once again, kind of like it was very, you know, everything was very grandiose. I don't feel like there was a lot of room for humor. I think Salvor's boyfriend Hugo was kind of the closest we got to that, but even he wasn't, like, he was a little quippy, but it wasn't a lot of jokes. This has levity in a lot of ways, you know, whether or not it's like even the Mule, I think some of the things he said, you know, had like a little bit of humor to it. So I really like the humor in it, and I like this kind of representation of Day.
Yeah, that was my favorite part, where he like walks in and he's got like the dude vibes. He's got Jesus vibes.
1000%.
And I am kind of curious, because like at first I thought, you know, the beard and the hair is just because he's having an existential crisis. But if you do like see the paths when they like turn into their respective versions of themselves. So when he becomes Dusk has longer hair, Dusk has a beard. You know, you can start to see gray going into his hair. So like, I know he does look like Jesus, and with the camel, it's like the show loves to throw religious symbology into it. But I could also see that that's also just his transition into Dusk.
Into Dusk, yeah.
And so, you know, but either way, Day, he's great. My favorite quip, he comes in, he looks at his Dawn, and he's like, hello, handsome, because it's his clone. And I was like, also, Lee Pace, phenomenal actor.
So
he
good.
Needs to, I just wish he was in more things. I've always loved him as an actor, and just watching him be like the really cruel Day in the first season to even a crueler Day in the second season, and then just being this like weird hippie Day. I'm like, this guy, his range is brilliant. But it is interesting how the last Cleon is looked upon by the new Cleons.
Yeah.
He is the Cleon that ruined everything. Cleon 17 is the absolute worst Cleon.
I mean, they're all puppets, you know?
Right.
And so really you could kind of blame Demerzel or original Cleon if you want to. And like, how is he supposed to know that Selden was walking him into a trap? How could this little foundation that's out there beat the fleet of Empire?
Right.
So, yeah, say whatever you want about that Day. I don't really see it as his fault. Now, he's not my favorite Day.
Right.
I think he was a little unhinged.
Just a little bit.
But I don't blame him for the fall of the Empire. Like that was out of his hands.
We did the numbers in psychohistory. We knew this was coming, and I don't think any choice he could have made would have fixed that. But that is how he is remembered.
Yeah.
And speaking of remembering, I thought it was interesting that we saw a new take on how they sunset one of the clones, where, you know, I think in the first season we saw this really like powerful version of it. It was very emotional, sad. We had this view of Demerzel of being this like motherly figure, just like coddling them into death. But we see that sometimes there's runners, and she literally just pushes them back in.
I know. I love the fact that they can like reframe things sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that the first season of like Dusk seemed afraid to go, and she like very tenderly kind of like took him and ushered him to this difficult thing, and it was a very tender kind of thing to do. But yeah, it was hilarious seeing like the opposite of that and having kind of a joke out of it. You know, Dusk even Dusk even is like,
Run, brother.
Yeah. In joking about it, it also makes it a little bit sadder of like, some of these really don't want to go and they don't have a choice of it. And you're seeing him struggle with the fact that he knows this is going to happen in 10 days. And all he can do is just watch clips of what the others have done.
Yeah.
I really wonder whether or not he's going to find a way out, because otherwise we don't have Dusk. I mean, technically Day will be Dusk, but like we don't have that actor in his portrayal.
Right.
So I wonder if he's going to somehow find a way out.
I wonder if we will have another like mid time jump thing. I don't know.
So that we get him back with this Day?
So we get him back with this Day. But it is odd because I think it might be because of the clones and like we know that there's genetic variations in them. But it does seem that like when the Day that they sunset or the Cleon that they sunset and they get rid of, he's like that older version of him. And then the Dusk that's with him is played by that actor. And then there's like Day. And so then there's no Dawn for a little bit. But it does seem like this Dawn is going to be the new Day, and that Day is going to be the new Dusk, and they're sunsetting him early. So it seems like with this like genetic variations, there must be something wrong with this Dusk that they have to sunset him early. Because she even makes the comment about it's better than watching him publicly decline.
Right.
And I don't know if this is a special case, but he does seem a lot younger than they normally do with Dusk.
Yeah. If they did any kind of a time jump, so like the fall of the Empire is coming in just 4 months.
Correct.
So if it was enough of a time jump to see the Dusk actor again, it would be well after the fall of the Empire.
That's true. So maybe not. I mean, I don't know. But maybe because the fall of the Empire is only 4 months away, maybe they choose not to sunset this Dusk
right
in 10 days. And I don't know where they're going to go with it, but man.
I mean, what's the point of carrying all this on if it's going to be over in 4 months? And this is the crazy struggle that Demerzel is going through.
Oh my gosh. I loved the scene with Demerzel in the like with the tree with the apple, another religious symbol, very much like the tree of knowledge, the apple. If you eat the fruit, you're destined for knowledge, and with knowledge you will be banished out of the Garden of Eden, and how a human cannot eat that because it's tainted with the blood of the robots. But hearing the story of the robot war, you think when you first think about it, it's about these robots that are trying to rebel, but the robot war was robots versus robots trying to figure out what to do with humanity.
Yeah, struggling with how to protect humanity.
Right.
And so like the interesting thing that comes out of that is like, well, what if protecting this one human is bad for humanity? Like, what if you are the robot assigned to protect Hitler?
Right.
Like that's not good for humanity. So should you protect this one human? Yeah. The way that I thought about the robot uprising was more of like, I didn't read the book I, Robot, so I know that the movie I think is like way off the book, but more of like the movie I, Robot, where it's like they just kind of rise against us, not like they realize the best way to protect us is to hurt some of us,
Right.
That's the way I kind of thought it was versus...
Same. Though I do like this kind of hearing this story of what created this robot, I would almost say civil war.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of gives me hope for Demerzel, right? It seemed like as soon as the programming of like protecting the human was against protecting humanity, the robots could change that programming. And it didn't work for all robots, right? Some of the robots couldn't understand that, or like couldn't like rationalize that and follow through with it. But the fact that Demerzel is now at this point where her whole goal is to love Cleon and Empire, and to serve Cleon and Empire. And yet Empire is destined to fall and maybe Cleons might not exist anymore. Is there a way to get out of this programming? And I don't know. I want to hope that there is, but like they even bring up the question, like, do you feel like you're being free? And she's just like, no, I'm like still obsessed with them. Like it's crazy to me.
Yeah. I think the paradox brought up by like the robot wars for me is the more interesting one than what Demerzel is struggling with right now. Because to me, what Demerzel has right now is almost like a lethal cancer diagnosis, where it's like you get this information about you have 4 months left and there's nothing you can do about it. Like we can try and ease your pain, but there's nothing you can do about the end. Versus like the robot war seems more of like a paradox of one thing I could potentially see having happened was that with all the processing of all of these like future advanced AI robots, that there wasn't one answer to the question of what is best for humanity. That with like all the technology that we got, putting it into this algorithm, we couldn't come up with, like, there's still things that can't be just processed down to numbers.
Right.
Is kind of the way that I took it. And I think that's really interesting that like each one would have a different interpretation of, what's best, and that would create this kind of uprising.
Yeah. Do you think that because like in that sense, like how the numbers, you can't just go by the numbers. Is that like another parallel to psychohistory of just going by the numbers and counting on the numbers? And so things that should be black and white seem to be a little less black and white and a little bit more gray.
I mean, psychohistory wasn't able to predict everything. It was a great predictive model, but it wasn't a perfect predictive model, because there were outliers that could kind of break the system. And so I think this potentially shows that there is like a limit to what computers can do, that they can't do everything. And I kind of like that representation. It's not like, okay, well, given enough time, they'll eventually get to perfection. And like, ChatGPT 4000 will be able to answer all of life's questions and know, what's the best way to take care of humanity and what's the future and how do we protect that,
Do you think that there was a reason why Harry gave Demerzel the Prime Radiant?
I do, although I still don't know it.
I'm kind of on two theories here.
Yeah.
One, kind of the one Demerzel mentions where Harry gave it to her to maybe like, she knows she's an AI that is trapped serving the Cleons. He's showing her the end of Empire to be like, maybe you can leave. So that was like what Demerzel thinks. But it did seem like when Ebbing, I think his name was Ebbing. Was that his name? The scientist guy? Ebbling. Yeah. When he goes and visits and he says, why did you give her the Prime Radiant to the enemy? He like instantly kicks him out. Like he just said the wrong thing. Like at first, Harry was very impressed with this guy. He invites him into his office in Trantor. They're communicating. And then as soon as he starts bringing up about why would you give that to the enemy, he pushes him out. Like, don't talk to me. And part of me wondered if Harry gave it to Demerzel because he's upset that he's the left hand of the important plan of saving Foundation. But also, like, a part of me thinks that AI Harry might be communicating with another AI brethren to be like, we can get out of this. We can beat our programming. Like, it's not...
Yeah.
Because programming can be gray, weirdly, then we can override that instruction and be better than what we were before. And so, I don't know. I feel like that Harry in the vault might have a little malicious machinations.
Okay, I've got a theory on it for you.
Please.
Okay. Harry foresaw the Mule or something like that, like basically the fall of the Empire. And so he gave it to her because he knows that her programming is to protect Empire. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend, So it's like he gives it to her knowing that if she sees what is going to bring about the fall of the Empire, she's going to do what she can to stop that. And that also is good for Foundation.
So she'll try to maybe stop the Mule as well. Instead of the Foundation having to stop the Mule, it'll be Empire and Foundation stopping the Mule.
That's my
And maybe
my
that
theory
brings a nice, cohesive, not Empire, but a full Galactic Council representing everybody with true democracy. Every planet has a voice.
Yeah. I thought this representation of Foundation was interesting, that it's like moved on from the religious phase, and you see that like some of the issues that we saw in last season, where it's like some people were kind of lining their pockets, have gotten so much worse.
Yeah.
The what's the Inber?
Is that the mayor, I think they call
the guy
him?
who's like the head of Foundation or whatever, And it sounds like Inber is kind of like a title that they kind of take on, maybe, because somebody said, they all call themselves Inber.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting, like his portrayal, his accent sounded like what you think of like the British colonizers, the ones that like even most Brits are like, oof, that's
the wankers of the bunch.
Yeah. So it was like, it was the type of representation that you can just like instantly be like, oh, I don't like this guy.
Very pompous, very awful. And the mixing of the messaging, right? He was like, I serve Foundation. He says, I am Foundation. And it's like, Foundation is not a person. Foundation is the idea that humanity can survive on after Empire. And I think that line specifically showed, like what kind of ruler he is of Foundation. And I like the new character Pritch that they had a little fun dynamic. I think he is a very interesting character. He's cool. Very feels like Han Solo-ish. Maybe a little like Hober Mallow, but like on the right side of the law. So excited to see where he goes and what adventures he'll be on. I think we're going to see some cool stuff with him and the Mule. Yeah. And shortly. Don't get too attached to him. He might die.
I can definitely see that the two of them will run into soon. I didn't think about the consequence of like him going there, that he would end up running into the Mule this early. I did think it was interesting. I don't know if they were like playing with our expectations. A name came up, with like Dawn at the council of like Randu Mallow. And it was like, oh, they're reusing a name that's like that big to us.
Right.
And so my initial thought was like, how is there, I mean, obviously there's probably more than one Mallow, but like you want it to be related directly to him, not just like, his whatever, something very, very removed. I did wonder whether or not it could be like Hope's kid, because they did do it, right?
They did do it.
So I did wonder whether or not this could be like related to that, that she did end up getting pregnant from like that one time, and that this was like related to it. And I was like, awesome, we're going to see another Mallow. But then he was gone real fast.
I know. I do think he is.
And he was a traitor. Like,
yeah, a descendant for sure.
Okay.
And that was like their tongue-in-cheek of way of being like, they did have kids. And, after that moment, I think that was just the way to keep the Mallow name alive. But then he looked like an interesting character. He had one arm.
Yeah.
I was like, where did that come from? Are we going to get all this cool lore about this guy? And he died. He's dead.
Yeah. But like this scene was another bit of great world building. You know, like I love the fact that there's this world where the sun side is crazy hot, the like dark side is crazy cold, and the only area that's visible is just under the moon's shadow.
Right.
You know, which moves pretty quickly. So like that was awesome world building. We've got like an exciting race scene. You know, we've got like good action in the beginning.
Yeah.
I feel like Foundation has gotten better and better, and it's gotten like much more comfortable with what it is. And it's like the writing, I think the acting's always been great.
Yeah.
But like the writing, the way that they tell stories has like the fights, the action has gotten better with every season.
Yeah. The fight scene on the speeder bikes or whatever you want to call them, and watching Randy Mallow with one arm fight Pritch pretty successfully like that. And that's also kind of why I'm disappointed. Like that character just seems so cool. Like I want to know more of this guy. What made him turn? Like what made him, how did he lose his arm? Like a lot of cool stuff. But even watching that like fight scene where he's fighting him and riding this bike at the same time, one-armed, I'm like, that's impressive. I need more of that.
Oh yeah.
So disappointed he's gone. Maybe we'll hear about him again, but probably most likely not.
Yeah.
But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you folks so much for joining along with us. Come back next week as we will be tackling Foundation Season 3, Episode 2. We look forward to seeing you then, but until then, I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.